And we're live. Good evening, good day, happy. This is the new show, which is True Crime with a Twist. So today we have three panelists. We have Aana and Shannon and Selma. So welcome to the show and welcome to the review of our serial killers. And for those of you that are just joining us, we look at serial killers with a slight difference. We look at their energy bodies, we look at their abilities, we look at perhaps what they were doing, how they were doing it, and more importantly, we ask you at the end of it, was this particular serial killer possessed? Did he have something very different with him? Did he have a demon walking with him? Or did he have an off-worlder walking with him? Why did he create and undertake these awful unalives and all going on the spree that they did? So we look at things from a different angle. So although it is still a true crime and these are serial killers, we asked some of the very difficult questions. Each of my guests today will have a look at their background, what they feel was happening with that particular person. And also, if they've provided any slides of images, we'll be looking at the images, which will give us a really good, strong representation of the serial killer, what they might have looked like, and how their energy bodies and now their etheric bodies, the toroidal fields, and all the vibrations might have changed. At the end, we will do a summation and a conclusion. And then you, the audience, can decide whether we're on the right track or whether we're completely off the track and this person was just built that way because they were made that way. So without ado, I'm going to bring up the information about today's killer. And he's really a creepy chap. Honest to God, he's a creepy chap. So he's Dr. Michael O. Swango. And he has got a lot of unusual aspects where he was quite a strange person because, he was a physician. So he was somebody who was in a position of trust. He really was. And he had as many as 60 fatal poisonings across the US and Zimbabwe. But he only admitted to 4 deaths. And he was sentenced in the year 2000 to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. And he is serving in Florence, which is where he wished to serve. So he's a very difficult character because he was extremely intelligent, but very, very disturbed. And he used to find it repeatedly interesting to see somebody going through the final stages of demise. And he used to try to be with a patient or a person as they were gasping their last breath. Very, very, very difficult energies around this man, which my panel today are going to be able to discuss with you. Extremely interesting case. So, get yourself a cup of tea, get yourself a cup of coffee, come and join us, because this one is really going to make your hair stand on end. What's interesting about him is that Michael also had his own little crimes that were triggered through investigations from the FBI. So he's like what they call a medical serial killer, which is very different from the others that we've been reviewing. And he was quite well educated too. He was a war veteran. He had alcoholism as well. He was trying to sort that out. And he had all sorts of troubling behavior, which started right from the beginning, actually, faking patient checkups and particularly looking at his unusual fascination with being with patients that were crossing over. So this is not a run-of-the-mill case, guys. This is one of those cases where you think, wow, this is a bit much. So each of the guests today have got a very specific skill set, and they will be introducing you to their skill set in the beginning, and they'll be talking you through what they have seen and what they have found having a look at this particular man. And this man, as you see, it's Michael. He is an extremely difficult energy. Have a look at his photograph. His photograph says it all. So he's got a lot of aspects as well where he was he got sick himself, where he was taking food and drink that was provided, and he was convinced that he was poisoning both himself and also co-workers, which is even worse. So not only did he do these types of heinous crimes outside the prison environment, but he also did that inside the prison environment. So as I said before, this case is one of these cases that just absolutely blows everything out of the park. So we're going to go back to our panel, and we'll start with Aana. Aana, could you please give us a little bit of a background about yourself, and what are your findings on this Michael Swango? What did you feel, please?
Sure. So I am a member of the Muskogee Nation of Florida, and I'm also part of the Demon Hunters Inc. group. I help do with land clearings, especially on where there's Native American entities that are causing problems with the land. So I do have some experience with that. This guy is wow. He's off the rails. Are we doing what we think initially right here and right now?
Yep, you're doing what you think, and then the summary. Yeah,
definitely has. I know he had psychic abilities and gifts like that, but definitely had attachments. I think that he was potentially demonized while he was in the Catholic boarding school. He was the valedictorian there, and he was already interested in poisons, things like that. Very strange behaviors, and I think that the reason he liked to be with the people as they were coding out, especially when he would do the ambulance drives early on, was to gain that last bit of energy that those people had as they were crossing over or trying to escape their bodies. I think he was just absorbing that for himself, because you'll notice after he did the ambulance rides during his school internship, he then goes really off the rails. He's gained a lot more power and confidence in what he's doing, and then just continues to unalive people. That's what I think.
Oh, that's very interesting. So you'd think it was during that particular period that he might have been demonized.
I believe so.
It's quite far back then. Wow. That's quite an interesting aspect to start looking at. Thank you for that. And what we'll do now is we will come to Shannon for you to just provide us an overview, please.
Cool. I'm Shannon. I do the Matrix of Destiny. It is like a form of numerology. So I was asked to explore how.
Is it something to do with, when you look at the numerology, is it something to do with, did you work on his birth date, or was there something else that you worked? Can you explain to the audience what do you need in order to be able to review his lack of abilities and his serial killer activities? Is it his birth date and his name, or is it just his birth date?
So it's birthdays. So it's your date of birth. And that reveals a deeper purpose. So it also tells me the karmic lessons that you have to work through in this lifetime, any hidden talents, all tasks that you have to complete. It also gives emotional patterns that you have to work through, and any places where there's going to be blocks or places where you need to grow karmically.
Okay. And what did you, when you were having a look at him, was there any specific numbers, like 11 or any other numbers that came up that, might have said, well, actually, this person might have had something in his background where he could have been better than he was, or was there anything that gave you a little bit of a clue when you were working out all of these numbers? Was there anything there that might have said, aha? Was there anything like that?
Well, yeah. So I must say that all of the numbers have a positive and a negative to them. So obviously, if the soul comes in and they understand that they have to work on something and they heal it and everything else, so it puts them on a positive. But unfortunately, I don't feel like he did work on them. So obviously, it went in the other direction. But there is his personality number is a 21, which could have been he could have been charming, creative, emotionally intelligent. But then in the unhealed one, it is unstable and it's a bit obsessed with control and secrecy and craves attention. So there's the negative side where I think he kind of went that way. And then his higher self number is a 10, which it could have been that he would have had great leadership qualities, but unfortunately, if it's unaligned, it would be more of a narcissistic tendency and more entitlement than the positive aspect.
So in your view then, when you were doing all this work on his, his birth date and things, most of those numbers, he seemed to have, rather than taking the path to the positive, in your view, he seems to have gone on the other way. He seems to have gone on the negative. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the question always is, what would he do with the power he's been given, his talents, and the path that he could have gone on, which would have been absolutely amazing. But unfortunately, because he didn't take, I don't know, the time or anything like that to work through the karmic lessons he needed to work through and all of that stuff, he unfortunately went in the direction he went in.
More into the dark side. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, Shannon. We'll ask you for a summation a little bit later. And last but not least, I'm going to come to Selma. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Selma, and tell us also, what you started working on this and how you started working on this. And then what we can do is we can start looking at some of the images that you were able to provide when you were really honing in and doing all of your transmissions and your downloads. You were able to do that. So give us some idea of what it is that you actually do, but also what it was that you were concentrating on and what you picked up when you were working on him, please.
Hello, good evening, ladies and the audience. Very nice to be here. I am a coach, a mental trainer, an alternative therapist. But more excitingly, I'm also very spiritually active. I do light language, I channel light language, I reactivate or let someone remember the light language, and so forth. So what I do is when I look at cases like these, I use numerology and my downloads and my channelings, and then I call it something like it's an esoteric mix of all of that. So I found this person quite, I don't know if it's awful to say, fascinating. These psychopaths that are in prison and get love letters and get really have women after women standing in line and are really in love with him. I think he was such a person.
Wow.
Like how awful it sounds, but when I connected to his energy, connected to him, I truly believe that was his case. I think he had a certain, or still has a certain charm around him that he absolutely used. You can even say like there was maybe a spiritually narcissistic vibe around him, a spiritual narcissism. And I've never used these two terminologies with
together.
Each other, but
yeah.
But I think with him, I would really say that. And I even came for myself to a very interesting question that I don't want to reveal right now because I want to make it, a bit more interesting. But I have really, in terms of if he was possessed or not, I myself have this question. So I used also the numerology, and I used his birth name, which is James Michael Swango. And I also checked in his nickname, which is double O.
Oh, wow.
And what I found were like really was really interesting, because there were and are parallels to each other. So the nickname and the birth name really didn't interfere. But when I start with his birth name, James Michael Swango, I found that his destiny number is 8. And as Shannon said, of course, it always has a light and a dark side. You know, you always have opportunity and you always have the challenge, you know. So what do you do? Which side do you go? And clearly when we look at the visuals later, we see that he was more or less in the dark side. But I believe that he used his gifts, his spiritual gifts, and his very powerful enlightenment to misuse what he's doing, what he was doing, you know. So, like for example, if you have the talent, or not the talent, the gift of deep insight, you know, like a spiritual insight, if you have that gift, so I believe he used that to actually do what he was doing. You know what I mean? So this is what I believe in. So the destiny number 8 is in its shadow expression addiction to control, domination, and manipulation. In the light side, it is like leadership, power, you know, and he could have had a certain degree of integrity, but clearly he didn't use it. Then he had a soul urge, his heart's desire. The number is 33. He has actually in with his birth name he has a master number, and with his nickname he also has a master number. What I can say later on. So the master number 33 is actually the healer, you know, being in divine service, practicing unconditional love. But for him, it turned into obsession, over control, kind of also like an inverted heart. You know, like instead of like being open and pushing his love outside, he actually inverted it as if he has swallowed it. You know.
Oh, wow.
Then he has personality number 7. And even the 7 is a very powerful number. So that person had really powerful numbers. So 8, like also the infinity, you know, then the 33, and then the 7, which is in the light side, wise, mystic, a spiritual seeker, actually, like in the main path. And for him, it was more the twist of being secretive, being cold, being withdrawn from his emotions, withdrawn from the environment, withdrawn from empathy, withdrawn from any kind of really human connection to other people. And then he has the number 1, which is his hidden passion. So also a very powerful number. And this is on the light side, it's a number of a pioneer, of a leader, of self-leadership, of like someone who can innovate, who's innovative, you know, but innovative based on like the divine will. But with him, it turned into narcissism. And this is where I believe you can say even spiritual narcissism, where he felt superior. I guess also he felt way superior to other people, because I believe that man was highly intelligent, highly intellectual, and highly spiritually evolved. So I believe that he was even like had a feeling of superiority, where his ego, like, you know, fed on. So that would be my first intake for this. And you can also see that in the image, you know, that I believe he had his 2 sides for sure. And I believe that he used the light, kind of like the gift of the light side, to do the dark side.
Wow, but that's the ultimate betrayal. So
Yes.
we'll come to Aana, when you see some of these energies with all the, you know, the demon hunting and the work that you've been doing with Kate and others around the country. does any of the colors that you see that are being portrayed in some of the images now, is there anything of that resonates with you specifically?
So on the right, that kind of sharp red, that resonates a lot more than that really pure kind of golden light around him. And I agree with a lot of what Selma and Shannon have said too. He really did have the potential to do great things, and especially having that master number 33. But this guy was really, like, looking into him was really complicated because I kept getting a lot of different things, and it, like, I know people aren't born evil necessarily, but like this guy came pretty close, it seemed like to me. So yeah, I just got just really bad things.
Yeah, it is quite a difficult one. And Shannon, was there anything on any of the numbers here when you were doing the numbers? Because Selma worked on the name and you worked on the date of birth. Was there anything in there that you could add to, or that perhaps there's some areas that perhaps you had a little more of an extension on some of those areas?
So for me, his comic tail was just a bunch of red flags, really, if they were misused. Obviously, like we say, there is the positive and the negative to each of the numbers. But that comic tail, if it was misused, it was just a whole bunch of red flags. So maybe in a past life, there was misuse of freedom, spiritual gifts, and these patterns can create someone who is manipulative, dominates and distorts reality for personal gains. The repetition of 19 in his soul task and his relationship line number warns of like a false savior type of person. And then when combined with the 10 and the 21 in shadow, the result can be someone who kind of wears the mask of someone who works in the light, but actually hides a very deep dysfunction in a way.
Gosh, it's a very difficult one. Ugh.
So then his comic tail is very heavy, and the 5 could be misused freedom and stability, while the 20 shows past abuse of authority, and the 15 is particularly concerning because that's the number linked to if used wrong, not wrong, but in the negative, it could be linked to manipulation, illusion, and maybe even seduction or charisma type of thing. But without growth, these lessons could spiral into a very dangerous pattern of behavior, which is exactly
landed him in prison.
Yeah, he had the opportunity to see these are the patterns that I'm going through. This is where it's landed me. And then instead of going, all right, let's try learn from this, let's figure out what's happening, he just was like, let's carry on with that.
Gosh, very dangerous. Yes, very, very dangerous.
Very.
So we're going to come back to you again, Selma, and we'll go back to thank you so much for the comments. I'm going to add one of the next aspects, which was some of the soul urges and heart's desires. So if you can explain, when you were doing your deep dive of him, it looks like you found not just the shadow, but you found some very, very extremely disturbing aspects. And I know that Aana from the demon hunter side of you, and we've got some demon hunters in the chat too. So a shout out to Kate. And we've got Danny Henderson in the chat too, who is extremely knowledgeable about demons at the same time. could you explain these images and what it was that you started tuning into and what your downloads were about with this particular criminal?
Yeah, sorry. When I tuned into him, I actually asked myself the question, because what I found interesting is, like, of course, everything is awful what he did, of course, but what I found interesting and different to most other cases is that he was not brutal. He was not physically brutal in, like, when he unalived other people. What he did, he used a substance and put the substance into their food or into their drinks. So actually, you could even say he didn't make his hands dirty. You know what I mean? So there was not any kind of lust of unaliving behind it. So I asked myself the question, was he actually thinking that he was freeing people from their bodies, that he was freeing souls from their bodies?
Wow.
That was actually the question that came to me, because when I tuned into him and with all the information I got, I believe, and that was also what Shannon already was saying, is with him there is a karmic energy, karmic unsatisfaction. And what I believe is, like, he had different lives and different betrayals in lives that he took with him, or that he got with him in this incarnation. And it could even go so far that he even went, or that he even was in Atlantis, that he was actually a very old soul and used to, like, experience betrayal, experienced abuse, experienced all these really like abusive and negative behavior from other people put on him, so that his soul actually accumulated this kind of energy and took it with it into every different lifetime. So I believe, really, or like I really, really strongly believe that I could even say I think he was convinced that he was freeing souls from bodies and not unaliving humans. That would be my twist in the story.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at the picture, like, we see, like, that his crown chakra, and there is another picture where you can see it even more. He actually had a very disturbed crown chakra, and no, that's yeah, exactly, crown chakra, and also a third eye chakra. They were kind of like twisted together, and like very very disturbed. Not There was not a free flow of energy. So I believe that he was, or in his energy field, there was a mix of different fragments of soul energy, and maybe even a walk-in interference. And that walk-in could be maybe an off-worlder. So maybe it was not a possession, like we say, like, possessed by a demon, but maybe it was kind of like an interference and manipulation, a steering from actually a being that was going in and out.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
Maybe.
So, Aana, would you like to make a comment on some of those aspects? I know that you work very closely with Kate, who's also part of Demon Hunters Inc. What are these energies that we're seeing? And, is this the sort of thing that you would have seen if you were working on a case? Could you give us some background on what it is we're seeing here with this particular criminal?
First of all, I do, Selma, I do like the idea of some kind of a walk-in or something with this guy, because it's just he's very odd. The energies are just very, they feel like splintered, his energy and throughout his body. It just feels very splintered and not I don't know that he was actually truly himself for a very long time in his life. I believe that there was something else that had either attached to him or, like she said, walked in. Because I mean, even in school, his thesis was on the poisoning of a Bulgarian writer. He did his entire medical thesis on that, so he had this obsession. And with the poisoning, by the way, being like clean hands, that is, poisoning is typically looked at as kind of a cowardice thing, but I looked at it as I got the impression that he was enjoying getting to sit back, watch that suffering, and I think that he was drawing energy and power from watching that suffering, because he even was poisoning his fiance, so it was just throughout. It seemed to me like he just was constantly deriving energy from other people, and he got it at their pain. That's how he got it. And I feel like once they were crossing over, that's why he was going on call when he wasn't even working at that time. He would be in people's rooms, and I think he just wanted to experience the last moments to draw in that power for himself. So whatever kind of an entity would do that, if it could be an alien, possibly, I could see that, if they drive true power from that. So
That's a very interesting one, particularly now that you've mentioned it. One of the notes that I had made was the fascination with the last breath, because I mean, obviously you're from a tribe that deals with warriors, that understands hunting and all those aspects, which is very respectful of the life force and energies of animals. But I think that part of the issue that I was interested in to understand was that last breath that comes out of an animal. I've heard that hunters will sometimes look into the animal's eyes and then honor that last breath. And I got this weird energy from him, as like, oh, he was either honoring it or he was stealing it, the mudder fudder. So could you explain, if you got any ideas on that? Because I just thought that this was very weird, and he was like over the bodies, and I thought, no, this can't be true. But actually, when you go back into the files, it gives a very strange side. What's your view on that, please? And then I'll come to you,
yes,
Shannon.
I agree. He was absolutely wanting to be there for that last breath, but it was not in the way that a warrior or a hunter would be revering an animal taking its last breath. He was sucking in that last breath so he could hang on to it for himself, and then he's sending these poor souls off without their last breath or energy. So it's a power play. He's got all of these people's last energies that he's hanging on to, and he's still alive right now. And his victims aren't, and they should have that. That should be theirs to walk through, to go into their next life cycles or wherever they're going. But it felt to me like a power play. I'm taking this. It's mine. I own a part of your soul, and that's that.
How awful. Shannon, have you got any comments on that? Thank you, Aquana.
I think that with his soul task number being 19, obviously we've established he went further to the negative side, but that it was driven more by his ego, and instead of like a dedication to a greater cause, obviously that ended up in narcissistic tendencies and maybe even a messiah complex, where he kind of maybe believed himself to be above consequences and maybe even justified what he was doing.
So that would be the 19. Gosh, that's so he's a lot dark. He's very, very dark, extremely dark.
And obviously they would have been fueled by his sense of entitlement because of having that position of trust as a caregiver, that whole trust me, I'm a doctor thing.
Oh Lord. Yeah, so we'll come back again to Selma, and we've got now this one of the new images here that you had provided for us is, could you explain some of the changes between the two? And we've got this, as you mentioned, the sadistic control, but we've got the psychic distortion. So could you go through some of what you'd picked up, and then I'll come back to the rest of the panel to give their views on what they're seeing as well. Will you go ahead with that, please?
Yeah,
Selma?
this is the image that like is based on the info I got for his birth name as well as his nickname, and which was double O. I couldn't figure out at what age he created this nickname, because he also changed his name, or like he took on a different name persona at one point, also with a completely different name. But I didn't look into this one, so I don't know at what age or what stage in his life he got this nickname double O. But the numbers are different for this, yet the overall energy of his personality and his being is actually quite similar. So here in double O, his destiny number is 11, which is like psychically fragmented, oversensitive, psychically fragmented. 11 is also like a master number again, and it when you look at it as a 2, then the shadow side is he's very oversensitive, psychically fragmented, and overwhelmed. Maybe overwhelmed because of he wasn't really interested in any kind of human empathy, human feelings, human emotions. Then his heart's desire is here a 7. So again, a very powerful number. And that also led him into isolation and spiritual elitism, you know. So this is exactly what Shannon also said, that he had a sense of superiority because of his like intellect, his intelligence, and his spiritual abilities. I would say so. Then he had the 5 in his personality as a double O, and the shadow side is where he was very unstable, very impulsive, and always escaping. You know, always like you know, when you have a piece of soap and you want to grab that piece of soap when it's wet, and you can really not really hold that piece of soap. This is what his energy was. So he was able to always like slip. That's why also it took actually the authorities a long time, you know, to really catch him, and to really like really catch him for his crimes. Then he had his hidden passion was 8, again the 8, but then in a different category, but again the 8. And here in his hidden passion, he was power hungry, manipulative, and he had this drive of control, this drive of like really being in control of someone, like being above someone, being above any weakness, I would even say. That for me was quite interesting to see, like the energy of the birth name towards the nickname, and actually overall in a summary, they are quite similar. So does that answer your question?
I think some of it, yeah, it definitely does, and obviously because, as you can see, where you've actually depicted the two different sides to the James Michael Swango, but then the double O, which is the nickname, the two pieces, which also brings me back to the fact that he was able to commit further atrocities in prison, not only outside the prison, but in the prison. So you've got those two different sides. So I think the way that we're seeing it now, it's racking and stacking. We've got a lot of extra information that's coming in. Very unusual character, very different side to him from all the other cases that we've had a look at. So I'm going to put back onto the screen so that everybody can have a discussion around it. I'm going to put back on the screen, and then I'll come back to you, Aana, and ask you just to have a look at were there any of these expressions of those areas that you might feel adds any credibility to some of the aspects that you feel would be part of your summary? And if you could start with your summary, and then I will move through our other guests to come to their summary. What would your overall summary be based on what you know to be true at the moment?
So it's really a complicated overall summary, because I also feel like because he was able to get away so many times, when he did get caught, he didn't have to serve much time. And then when he would get in trouble, he would just be able to get a job somewhere else. Honestly, I don't know if maybe he was an asset for one of the 3 letters kind of thing. I did get that was possible. And with the nickname Double O, like,
Yeah.
that's a bit on the nose. But I do also think that there were attachments, and I think he was drawing up that energy and using that for whatever his needs were, or however he was empowering himself. And with the 2 master numbers, I mean, that he had abilities, so he would have been able to use that. So I just got a whole range of things with him, but I do think that he was possibly an asset, and that he had been purposefully, because of his intelligence level, he was exceptionally intelligent. I believe that he was purposefully demonized to do these things, and then he was able to get away from the United States and go over to Zimbabwe and be doing the same thing. But it wasn't until he got into another country that they finally got him. It just, everything seems very strange with this man. But I do believe there were attachments, and I think there's a possibility that he worked for other organizations.
That's very good. It is possibility. That is a possibility. The 3-letter agencies. That's an unusual twist to this. So let's have a look. Shannon, what is your summation of this awful person? What do you see, and what were some of your downloads when you were working on this? What would your final view be as a summary, please?
Well, I think from the beginning he was wired for intensity. If you look at all of his numbers, they're quite, he has quite a few gifts, and unfortunately his gifts, instead of using them for good, he weaponized them, and that, I think, also led to his inner conflict between his light and his dark, and his high intellect but low emotional, so his IQ versus his EQ. Maybe that was also another fight inside him, where instead of working through the karmic paths that he had to work through, he didn't, and that was eventually what was his downfall. And I think he's a soul that held extraordinary potential, a great leader, a great healer, but because he led with an unhealed ego and his karmic debris that he just had with from past lives, and the distortion between the light and the dark within him, he became a shadow version of the visionary that he could have been, that he was meant to be. And I think, if anything, if I've taken anything away from this, it's that it reminds us that spiritual power without integrity is dangerous. And like I said, he had the master number of 11, and if that's left unawakened, that power, instead of having it to elevate, it could destroy. And unfortunately, he chose the second option instead of taking the first option and doing the work and putting the time in and working through what he needed to work through to elevate and to be that amazing visionary that he could have been. So, it's sad, and obviously,
It's a difficult path. Very,
it is
very
a
difficult path. So
and
that's an
obviously,
unusual take then, because it's something that he could have been a lot more of, because he had all these passions, but never did anything with it, went to the dark side. So he became a dark warrior. Thank you, Shannon. And last but not least, Selma, what is your final overview, please, of James Michael Swango?
My my final overview is that his soul was highly fragmented, and that I believe that he was a conduit, like a channel conduit for off-world forces. This is how I would express it, and and I also believe that he had kind of like parasitic attachments, for sure. I think you necessarily have that if you are attuned to this kind of energy level. And I believe that he really like the thought of the last breath that Aquana said is interesting, that he took it because he heard he was the conduit of kind of like the more breaths you take, the stronger you get. So his spiritual power, was it growing because of that? That would be also a question I would have for the audience. And or did he really enjoy of like seeing that last breath going out because of his superiority and his power, and the addiction to control, the addiction of manipulation and power? Or was he really convinced that he would free souls from the body? Because in his karmic energy and his previous lifetimes, he had that. He had this how do you say, this feeling of like unbearable feeling of being in a human body, unbearable feeling of being like a human, being alive on earth, alive as human, because of his betrayals, the betrayals that he endured from other people throughout the different lives. So I also see that in his energy field. So these are three questions I would like to give to the audience and see what you think.
I think that's brilliant. Thank you, Selma. So, I'm going to do a conclusion, and then for those in the chat and the audience, if you would like to put a QQQ in the chat, we'll be taking some questions as we move through, because the question we're obviously trying to answer here is, was Michael Swango 00? Was he possessed? Was there demonic entity or something walking with him? So when I started looking at him, just to add my 2 pence worth, is I found that, and I made a few notes, and I agree with the karmic debris, but also the big aspect that kept on coming back to me was there was this unusual, very large, dark entity, but a huge one. It was like 12 to 15 feet tall. And that entity looked to me like some form of off-worlder, either a Draco or reptilian or something like that. And that's where we get the last breath, as Aquana had said, as well as the ability then to still continue your life without having done the shadow work. So going ahead, transmitting those energies, meant to be a healer, but never did it. Because why? Because something unusual decided to utilize his higher energies and his higher intellect, which would match with an off-world reptilian type. Now we know that the reptilians, the Dracos, the others, the Greys, etc., all these awful beings, we know that they're no longer walking with us on Earth. We know that. They're gone. So the other aspect that I would like everyone to think on is that he wasn't able to heal himself, and that entity with that fragment of the off-worlder was then removed, because these beings were removed from Earth so that we could get on with the awakening. Very important. So this meant that this Michael person, the criminal, was left high and dry on his own. So this is the additional aspect, and I think it's been really good because each of you as panel members, you've looked in isolation over the last week, but you've all realized that there's something very strange with him. There's not just this particular type of being. There's something extra that you couldn't maybe put your finger on. And this is where we come to this unusual aspect where there's an outside force that has come through on him. And I mean, 60 people, come on, guys. And those are the 60 that they knew of. And he only admitted to 4, but there was 60 people, as well as all of the other, louche the energies that he was drawing off individuals, as well as those unalivings that we don't even know about. We don't even know about them. So, and the key thing here, which I'd like everybody to think about, is he was using their energy. And what uses their energy better than anything else is a Draco Orfwalder, because that's their food, that's what they eat. They're able to bring that energy into themselves, utilize it to keep going. So I think that part of the overview with him was that yes, he was left high and dry, but he continued to try to move forward with that energy even in prison. But the being that was walking with him was removed, which means it only leaves the demons. So the overview and the final summation is our conclusion as a panel is not only did he have demons walking with him, but he also had an Orfwalder that was utilizing his very being and taking all that energy. So let's have a look and see what we've got. Yeah, this is a good one. Love this. Soul scalping. Love that. Yeah, it is a type of soul scalping.
Yep.
Yeah. This is it. That's a really great question. So Denise Menace is saying, is that a type of soul scalping? Thanks. So yes, as our resident demon hunter, because we always try to have a demon hunter on all of the panels, whether it's yourself or Chris or Kate or any of them, or even Anna Marie. What is your view? Is this a soul scalp?
Yes, 1,000%. And also with the scalp, Native American, yes, for sure. This is a soul scalping. Also, I wanted to say thank you for explaining with the draconian, because I don't know anything about them. That explains the last breath, because I could not figure out what is he doing with this, and I couldn't figure out why a demon would. Thank you, I appreciate that. But yes, he is absolutely soul scalping for real. That is the best phrase I've heard for it. Yes.
So yeah, the last breath would be, he would be having his favorite dinner, whatever it might be, and this is what they utilize that for, in order to be able to continue, in order to be able to live, and in order to live amongst us here, amongst humans, they need that level of loosh, and that is like the top of the top. This would be the caviar, guys. Come on, this is the caviar of the soul scalping, is to be able to take part of that breath. So he was in a perfect position for exactly that. We see the same, unfortunately, we do see the same happening for those children that have been involved with CSA or SRA. When they get to that point, part of that issue is that they take part of that soul and part of the fragment and part of that light. It's exactly the same thing, but just slightly reversed. Where the person remains alive, but without their full soul abilities in one place. And that's very much an Orfwalder thing. So yes, Denise Menace, your question, is that a type of soul scalping? Yes, you've heard it. And from Shannon's point of view, and of course yours from Selma. Selma, what is your view on the soul scalping?
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. I saw a comment of someone who said like it's Death Eater. So I would definitely agree to that. Soul sculpting and death eating for sure, and
Death
even
eating.
maybe breathtaking. I mean, like, I don't want to be too sexy in creating terminologies, but yeah, for sure, absolutely, this is what I agree for, or to.
Okay.
Sorry, this is
Thank
what
you.
I
And Shannon, what is your view on that as part of the panel, please?
I have no idea what soul sculpting is. So I'm going to leave it to you guys.
Good answer,
I have
Shannon.
no idea.
Good answer, Shannon.
Keep it that way.
I tend fires at home. I'm all good. You guys go out there and deal with that.
The demon hunters do that. Yeah, this is it. So soul scalping is when somebody has part of their soul physically removed. So this takes
That sounds
place.
horrific.
It is horrific, absolutely awful. Having witnessed this sort of thing, which is just as bad as birthing a demon, equally as bad. But that's what you would use that soul scalp for, is you would be collecting all of that in a larger legion, or one of the top legions, or a duke level. You would collect all of that in order to birth a demon. And part of that soul then is removed in the child, or from the child, during these awful sadistic events. And they happen regularly, but not to the same child. It would be different children over a period of time, and then they would literally rack them and stack them until they're ready to birth a demon. Because there's two types of demons. There's a demon that is created, and there's a demon that is birthed. Two different things. And the soul scalping, that energy, that illusion, the energy that they're collecting from that last breath, from those that we're passing on, that is utilized for that, or it is utilized to feed one of the Draco, one of the Draconians, one of the reptilians. Two different things, but same purpose, food. Or in the case of birthing a demon, a soul scalp would be taking part of it in order to birth a demon, which is a different process, but same aspect. You need a powerhouse. Okay? You need an energy. You need something to run the car. And I just get away from the screen.
You're making the screen blue again.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. I stay away from it. So from that point of view, you need an engine. So, and that's the engine. The engine is what you receive from the soul scalp, from the last breath, where you're pulling that out of the body. But you'll also find, and I've noticed this a lot, one of my very good friends, Linda, she's been looking after, she's what they call a death doula. So she's somebody that sits with someone who's getting ready to pass over. And she says often she'll have to be vigilant, and she'll see all the way around that these entities are waiting for that person to start transitioning, because they want to grab it. And she said to me, she says, I've got to be on my toes. Seriously, I've got to be on my toes, because I can see them coming in, and I think, not today. You're not lucky today. You're not having this person. And because she's a death doula, she's trained to make sure that she has all the corners, she has that person safe, so that person can transition quite peaceably. But this is a thing, everyone. This is a thing. And that is what this person was doing, catching souls. Let's have a look and see whether we've got Tashelle saying, wait, he was a doctor. No. Yep. Mm-hmm. And we've got Boo. He wanted to extend his life, so he tried to take it from others, perhaps. Yep. Well, it would have extended his life, but once that being was removed, he's now stuck where he is. I would imagine, I'd hate to see what he looks like now. I would imagine he would have aged.
I saw him. He looks terrible.
You saw him. Oh, you
Yeah.
actually have it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, not nice. Okay, we've got Gina Dean saying this is quite good. Makes me think of James Bond's secret agent type 00. Yeah, like 007. We were kind of thinking that, weren't we, panel? We were thinking, 3-letter agency. Yeah, you're on the right track. Oh, Nacy, you're so cute. Nacy's saying, has everyone hit the like button? Thank you, Nacy. we need the like button. Thank you. Agent Orange, what are we saying? Agent Orange always comes up with them. There are 6 who have not liked.
Wow. You better get on that.
I love it, Agent Orange. Keep it coming. I know who you are. Come on, you
You're
mother.
so naked in front of Beverly. It's like unbearable anymore, you know. So you're so naked in front of that woman. It's like unbelievable.
So funny. Oh my goodness. Agent Orange, that has really tickled me. That has seriously tickled me. Oh Lord, I must stop it now because I'm going to be. I'm just ha. Who's saying this now? Nacy, ha. I proper snorted. Yeah, I nearly snorted. You're right. I nearly did. Yes, seriously, not a good look. Not a good look. Oh dear. Right, what have we got? This is D. People like us feel bad when we hit a squirrel on the road. Yeah, definitely not.
Poor squirrel.
Squirrel.
And then there's people like this guy. Yes, seriously. Yeah, I agree with you, D. Yep.
Yeah,
It's like the son of Sam one. We're going to be looking at that one too. Here we go. Another one. Was he fighting any demons? I think he was, bring them along, guys.
Bring them in. The more the merrier.
The more the merrier. No, he wasn't fighting. He was, yeah, so this is an interesting one here for us. Laureen Renee. So he was maybe sodomized and demonized in a ritual as a boy and then used by the alphabets for bad ETs. They must have known he was special, so they flipped him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So purposefully demonized humans. She says, cool. Yeah. Who knew, huh? Who knew? Yeah. Yes, this is both. You'll have both. So not only here as humans do we have, the demonization to deal with, but we've also got just as well, we also have some of the others that are particularly awful. But we do know Greys have been chased off. Federation have done a great job there. And also the Draco. They were rehomed, guys. They were taken off planet, given a new place to go and live. Bye-bye, Louis. Never want to see you again. Yeah, this is it. Q. Let's see. Have we got any more questions? Let's see. Tana. This is a good one. So, Tana Toffen, have you heard of destiny swapping? Yes, there is destiny swapping. That is such a thing. Sometimes it's walk-ins. Sometimes a walk-in will take on a husk, and they will, if they have a particular destiny that needs to come in and align, they will make an arrangement with a person that will walk out, and then you'll have the new person walk in, and that destiny will then be swapped over. So the person that should have been in the husk, or the main body owner, walks out, and then the new destiny will come in. So they get given a job. They're generally called walk-ins. But the destiny swapping as well, you can also change some of the destinies and take on, I think, more of the contracts that you have with the Akashic records. You can move some of those depending on what the Melchizedek and others, depending on what would be necessary in order to swap the destiny. Yes, we have heard of it. So some good questions this evening.
I've got a question. Do you think that then when at point where he was caught when he was younger, and where I thought maybe he had actively chosen to rather just go back to what he was doing instead of working on being a better being, do you think that's when that walk-in came in maybe?
Yeah, it's possible, because obviously whatever was vacating the husk, and this is the way it is, when you have a space, something's going to have to come. It's going to have to come into the space. So I think that's something that we can probably have a look at to see, well, what's actually walking with him now, because I think whatever vacated, it would have been taken off world anyway. It would have been gone off Earth. So there is something else in there. It'd be interesting to see whether it's now just a demon. I know, so I say it's just a demon, but you know, they call yeah, I see our corner's laughing. Yes, it's just a demon. Yeah, we can deal with them, but you know, you can touch them and turn them into dust, which is always very useful. You just need a dustpan.
Hit him with a sandal.
I missed sandal.
With a high heel, you know? With a high heel.
But, no, not a high heel.
I like Selma's idea.
12 centimeter high heel. Bam!
Yes, I agree, Selma.
In red,
I may have to get some high heels now.
Exactly, in red.
Just so I can go demon slapping.
Exactly. You know, we have that, you know, like in Arabic, you know, in Arabic countries, this is an insight. If you like, you know, like the mothers, they get they take the ship, you know, the house shoe, you know, and like a flip flop, and like beat their sons, you know. There's like a very like beat their sons with a flip flop, you know. So, and then you have a joke, it's like, okay, don't come with the shoe, like, and beat me with the flip flop. And I was like, oh, well, I could take the high heel, you know, and like beat them really, you know, like put holes in. So
that's right.
Yes.
I have images now of these poor men running around with the mothers hitting them with the flip flop.
Exactly. You know, like you could even have like, you know, very respectable 40-year-old, 50-year-old man, and like in very high positions. But when they go home, they are really fearful of their mothers. I tell you, and sometimes even of their wives. You know, when they stand there and waiting for them with the flip.
Waiting with the shoe. Waiting.
Yeah.
You were late.
Exactly. You know, it's like they're beating the demons out of those men. You know, like the mothers, the wives,
men and women. You know, nothing wrong with the flip flop getting a smack around the chops.
You see. Other countries, other cultures, other traditions.
I'll smack you around the chops, not with a wet fish, but with a flip-flop.
Exactly. So you can use then high heel for demon hunting.
Perfect. Wow. I'm never going to leave home without it.
You see?
Okay, Nacy is saying, how do I make sure me and mine don't get soul scalped? New fear unlocked. Nacy, you don't have to unlock this as a fear. It's highly unlikely that you would get soul scalped, because in today's world we have protection in place. The world has now just unleashed huge amounts of angelic realms, and over the last, I think it's 2 months, there has been a huge vortex and channel that's opened that has not only brought the positive off-worlders, but has also brought a lot of angelic realms into light levels, so that we are ascending. And while we are ascending, it is highly unlikely that you personally and you and yours would get soul scalped. Is there anyone else has got a comment about that, please? Selma?
Yeah. I mean, like, consider also who were the victims of that guy. Were the victims like prone to that kind of attracting that kind of man, that kind of energy to them? I believe so, because if you're someone who does their shadow work, who's like aligned, you know, who's connected to the divine, who's connected to the light, who has faith, you know, in whatever form you practice your faith or you have faith in. So like, if you have a clean heart, if you have a clean consciousness, if you can look yourself into the mirror, into your eyes, and have your clean consciousness, you know, if in a nutshell, if you try to be a good human, have empathy, have think about other people too, and want to do good, I don't believe that you would be a victim of something cruel like that. That would be my answer. And yes, definitely, Beth, I agree to this angelic help and realm and energy around us. They are absolutely here and supporting us.
There's so many of them here, and they're here to protect. And we all have our own guardians and spirit helpers and all these right now. And as we awaken, our spirit soul tribe is going to get wider and larger anyway. Aana, have you got anything to say about that? And then I'll come to Shannon.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree, and especially with the fact that like the Dracos and the great, they've been forced off the planet. The odds of something like this happening right now are minimal, and Beverly's absolutely right. The light is shining so bright right now that all you've got are these desperate demons. They're like losers, like trying to cling on to whatever little snippet they can get, but they're losing power rapidly. So I would not worry about that at all.
And final word, Shannon, on this question.
Well, I agree with Selma. If you be a good person, be lacquer, don't be a box type of thing. But I think if you are a little paranoid, maybe up your protections around you and yours. It's always good to go out with some protection, keep some crystals on you.
That's actually a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a good, and also
there might not be the greys and all the rest of them, but there are still quite a few other chojos that run around wanting to.
Yes, and a quick translation: a jojo is a demon.
Damn.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's fine. So we've got a lovely question from Katz. How do you explain end-of-life hospice workers who mean well and minimize suffering for their last breath? And this is a light worker question. And she says, thank you. So that's a really, really good question. There is a level of minimization. That's very true. And having had a lot to do with hospice and those that were passing over, particularly over the last few years, I saw that with my own family members. There was medication that was provided directly into the drip, which minimized the level of suffering. But I will say, and this is something that I think will bring a lot of comfort to many people, is that even though the medication was administered, the last breath still continues and it still moves forward in the way that it should. The only thing that the medication does is that it stops, and we are not clinicians here just so that we don't get a strike. We're not clinicians. We're not saying anything medical. We're just talking about the death and dying process. Any of those aspects that are given in a hospice environment is to stop the body, the physical body, the organic body going into the last throes. That does not obstruct the breath coming out, because that rattling process and then that person pushing out, that still continues. So yes, they are minimizing suffering from the physical body, from the organic body, but that last breath does still continue and does not cause any problem with the last breath moving. Not at all. I hope that helps. And I'll pass the same question to the rest of the panel, and I'll just go to my side. Aana.
I thought you said it perfectly well, and I'm really glad to know that the medications that are provided do not interfere with that last breath or that transitioning, because I've had my own family members and seen them at that stage as well and been with them, and you don't really know. So that actually is very comforting for me to find out. So thank you.
Yes, and I'm sorry for your loss. I'm aware that there was a loss in your family. So if I don't know what you saw, what you were able to attend during the loss of your family member, but I can guarantee you, no matter what happened at that last moment, that person, she would have been fine. She would have been able to allow her last breath, and she would have been able to transition whatever she was given at the time to help her in the throes through her body and through what was happening. That deals with the body only. It will not and does not interfere with the last breath. I hope that helps.
Yeah, greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. And Selma, any comments?
No, I think I need to pass on this. I don't have an insight or opinion actually about that.
Okay.
Mm.
Shannon?
Yeah, I agree. I think you said it beautifully.
Good. I hope that that helps, particularly those who are going through these sort of issues, and at least we can all go into these last moments, because we will all have those that are very precious to us that are going into their last moments, and those that are transitioning and are coming up with their transition. And we know that the clinicians and doctors and nurses will do everything they can to make sure that the transition is not as stressful as it could be, because we don't really want those that are around the bedside or sitting with someone who's transitioning to be very difficult. And protect, the same token, will protect the last breath of the person that's going to go across. And you were waving, Aquana.
Oh, I did want to add to the person that asked that question. There's a very big difference in a hospice worker who is in that caregiving position and understands what they're doing. The man that we're discussing who was stealing this was attacking patients that were not at their end of life. He made them come to their end of life. So it's a big difference in the kind of person that would be around somebody that's in hospice care. So I would just add that.
Now that's a good clarification, because this person was this Michael Swango is a criminal, obviously, and he was hastening the end times and the departure from the 3D, from Earth realm. And yeah, so we've got a comment here from Fifi Butterfly. Oh, I love that name. The double O is like the two. Oh my word.
Ouroboros.
Nope, lost me there. What is an
It's the snake that's eating its own tail. It's in the infinity almost sign, but it's
gender?
Ouroboros. Yeah, it
Okay,
would just be
very interesting. I didn't know that. We've got another question from Lorene again. Lorene Renee. So the question is, when did he turn bad then? At some point, he was just a special little boy who was smart and had a major numbers, yes. Do they know which ones to target? So they would be assuming that it's either demonic realm or off-world realms that are, the malevolent awful ones. So I think that, in my view, I would say yes, there is a particular light and a particular energy frequency that moves in a person that is very, very smart, but also has the ability to bring down transmissions, to bring down downloads, and is vibrating very fast. And that is very obvious. It can be seen. It is extremely visible, and becomes one of those that almost like a moth to a flame, really. Because you've got a moth. One moth will always find, you just have to put a light bulb outside and you'll find thousands of moths will be there in 2 seconds. It is the same sort of situation. I think, Akona, you'd said, just remind me, you'd said that he turned bad. When was it that you'd seen that he was
I
demonized?
I believe when he was in school, he was in a boys Catholic boarding school type of situation, and I believe it would have happened when he was younger, and
It's
it's a
younger.
lot easier as
So before
it
the
should
age of
be.
8.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that answers that part of Laureen Renee's question. When did he turn bad? Was there any other comments with the major numbers, Selma and Shannon? I'll come to you first, Selma, with the major numbers.
Yeah, I believe that he had like the opportunity to be really good in a leading way, in an inspiring, idle way. He had like the master healer number 33. He had like the 11 also in his field, and he had the 7, the spiritual seeker. So he had the opportunity. But I believe because of his karmic energy and his karmic past life package, I would say, it's a really huge package, like a backpack, that what he endured in school or in his childhood triggered that first and foremost on a subconscious level, and then maybe at one point more consciously, but then it was too late. So, this is like the dynamic we all have. We all get triggered, and then we look into, okay, is it something in this life? Is it something from childhood? Is it something from past life? Is it something ancestral? So we go in all these layers, and with him, all these layers were triggered, but he never did the work. On the contrary, because he was so not open, but so like highly intelligent and highly spiritually able. He allowed this power, this inward, this walk in this off-world being to really make use of him, because of his character that was like, oh, I'm better than anyone else. I have a sense of elitism. I like to be in control. I like to manipulate. This gives me a sense of power. This gives me a sense of superiority. And given that he was someone who lived more for himself in isolation, and more kind of like a very closed up person.
And Shannon, what's your view on this, particularly within major numbers, and what is it that you saw when you were doing your final review? Was there anything there, particularly because you were saying that there was that karmic frequency, and then I think in my notes you were saying that the karmic debris? I thought that was a very, very good term.
Yeah, so I also looked at his power kin number, which is an 11, which would have had him as a spiritual transmitter kind of person. And in the light, that would bring vision, healing, and his possibly psychic abilities. But in the shadow, it would be delusion, manipulation, and then obviously the misuse of his abilities. And then his inner strength code was a 10, 11, and a 21, which, again, if it was in the light, it would have been leadership, intuition, and magnetism. But because it was led instead by his ego, it became very dark versions of that. And it was almost as if he was able to have a mask of being light and, the good aspects, but in reality, just behind that, he was hiding a very deep, dark
secret in a way.
Yeah.
Now that's very interesting, because some of the reptilians and some of the Draco, and particularly specific warrior types, so the brown ones, they have an ability, exactly what you've just explained. They do have an ability to put forward this mask that makes them appear to be something specific. And then what's going on behind is it's almost like this transmission where you have those frequencies, and it's something totally different. So what you were describing is this being that might have been with him, that was stealing those energies and utilizing it for nefarious purposes. So it looks like that could be what it was. That was very interesting. Thank you. Let's have a look and see what we got here. So Fifi Butterfly is saying, would the reptilian have been first and then the other demonic entities taking advantage of the weakness? So it is possible, depending on the age, but then Alquano had said that it was probably before the age of 8, which would have been then, in the time that the reptilians had been here, they were extremely opportunistic. So if they had found a child that was very bright, a very bright ball of light, then that they would be attracted to that. And because they're able to glimmer and cause that individual to close off and get into them and do a higher level of possession, I think, Fifi, you're right. It would have been reptilian first, and then other demonic entities taking advantage of the weakness afterwards. What does everybody else feel with that here? Aquana, I'll
Agreed.
come to you, and then I'll go to Selma, and then to Shannon.
Yep, I absolutely agree with you. I believe it would have been the other entity, and then those other ones would have been added in later.
So almost like legions that you've got the
Right.
reptilian, and then you've got all of the others, because
Yeah.
some of them are quite reptilian in look, especially
Right,
those
exactly.
with the hooks, those with the hooks, and those with the okay. And Selma,
Absolutely.
Well, I believe it all starts with the high heels. Yeah, I mean, yes, I agree to what you said. I would even say, like, maybe the Dracos like sent forth some of their minor assistants, to pave the way, to like, like to start baking the cake and making the cake ready before they jump on it. So that's how I would even see it.
that's a good analogy. We're back to food again, and of course, Shannon.
Yeah, I think, I mean, from just the things that I've heard on your other shows, it doesn't seem like those other entities enjoy much work wise, so they take the easiest route possible. So it would make sense that they would come in after the hard work has been done.
And also they are, not only are they territorial, but they follow the chain of command. They're command driven, because they have a royal white Draco at the top, and the royals are very high up, and they do very little work. All the minions underneath do that. So so the juice has got to be worth the squeeze, or the squeeze has got to be worth the juice. And in their case, they would have come in at the end. Absolutely. Good question, Fifi Butterfly. Oh, we've got an Australian viewer. Here we go. I've got a shout out. Hi, Kerry. Much love from Australia, from us too. So let's have a look. Isn't what he did. So Tashal Shamesh is saying, isn't what he did illegal against Earth's law of free will? How do they get away with this? Yes, you're right, Tashal. It is against the free will of human beings on the Earth realm. Absolutely. And as we know, they have those entities that are Draco, the Greys, the tall Greys, etc. All of those have been removed. So they would have gone against free will, but only for a short period of time, and they would have been taken off and taken out. So yeah, that is absolutely right, Tashal. Let's have a look and see what else we've got, and we're coming up to the hour now. Boo. There's someone called Boo. That's very interesting. I've only just recently heard about this Boo term. My other daughter's dog is called Boo Boo, which is very sweet. I did see her today. She's very cute. E.T. can definitely go home now.
I like that comment.
Oh, Boo, that's very cute. We like it. We like it. We like it. We like it. Oh, my word. We've got a couple more last questions. Gina Dean. Question. Do you think his father being in Vietnam could have been a reason why he was attached to off-worlders? I did see that. He did do a couple of terms. He had been in Vietnam, and his dad had been in Vietnam. There were some very unusual energies in the Vietnam War and all of those areas. It was very different. So it is possible. What does everybody else think? I'm now going to swap it around. I'll come to you first, Selma, and then I'll work my way around. Selma, what do you feel with this?
Yeah, I mean, like the energies that his father carried with him, of course, could have like influenced the boy for sure. I would say yes too. Yeah.
Yes to that. Thank you. And Shannon?
Well, I think just from his father being in Vietnam, then coming back, obviously he would have dealt with quite a few things of his own, and I don't think that would have had a very positive effect on a young child. So I think that would have also added another layer to what he was struggling through as a young person.
True. And Aquana.
So I love that this question was put forth, because all day today, earlier, when I was just thinking on this, I kept going back to the father being in Vietnam and that being a source of a lot of this man's problems. So I do think that there's very much something to that. And yeah, that I just kept getting it over and over. So I'm glad that somebody pointed that out. I got the same feeling.
What's very interesting within, a situation where you have either warriors, but also specifically individuals that have been in forced combat, which most of the soldiers, the warrior aspect was not a choice. It was forced upon them. So you would find that those individuals, when they're going through the battleground, a lot of those that have become departed or deceased, they will attach themselves to individuals as they're moving or extracting themselves from the battleground. And I do think, as you said, Gina, with his father, that when he returned back home, he probably returned home with many, many attachments and many different types of personality disorders and all sorts of things happening to him because of what he had seen during the Vietnam War. So that's a good question. And then we've got a comment here from Kate, which is just, I have to put it up because it's just tickled me. Kate is saying,
Girl.
the high heel shoe, a new demon hunter tool.
So maybe I will become a demon hunter too then.
Yes, Kate, we are getting our high heels. I'll have one, you have the other.
Yes. Kate, will you teach me how you do it then with the
Of
high
course.
heel?
Yes.
Aquana.
Yes, I got you.
And Gina Dean is saying, I thought the wise weapon of choice was the frying pan. Oh, that's really good.
Oh, I love
we have
that.
to do this.
Getting creative here. That's good.
Yeah, very. And then, of course, this comes back to you, Selma. I think you have a fan here, Agent Orange.
Oh, yeah.
If there's a flip-flop Olympic team, my mom and her sisters will be gold medal. I think
I don't think so, Agent Orange, because, if the Arabs, if like people from the Arab countries participate in that, they would definitely win, for sure.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, that's created havoc in the chat. So they've got their own little party going on. Oh, Lord. Oh, we've got a new person joining us, a person called Judy Donnelly. Hello, everyone, and hi. Which is good. And obviously, we get lots of people saying, thank you for that. And we have somebody called Honeybee. This is specifically for you, Aquana. They're sending condolences for your loss.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's really lovely. And let me have a look. Oh, haha. Look at this. We have something. This is on an aside. Tashel, I did send the letter to the White House for you for the Creek Nation. Wow.
Awesome. Mado. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, that's wow. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Oh, this is also something interesting. Nacy is saying, okay, I'm not going to say the first bit, but I'll say that explains it. Boys Catholic boarding school says it all. I won't say the first bit.
You weren't going to. Well, F me. That's what it said.
Agent Orange, will he be fighting his departure? Yeah, I actually think he will be, because he probably know what's coming. And I think that when his departure is upon him, could you imagine how full that room is going to be?
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just saying. And we have got, this is Sam. Sam is saying, Sam 3 artistry. Oh, how lovely. Must be something to do with music. I'm not a girly girl, so forgive the question. What is with the one black fingernail? Basically, it's just fashion because I'm wearing black with feathers and pink. Yeah, you can just all crash. It's fine. Trust me, I will get rid of it for tomorrow because it looks a bit weird. But yeah,
It's a strange color for you. It feels like a weird color for you on the. I don't know.
Black.
Well, just on the
But
one. I don't know.
you could always put a chrome over it,
So
and then it just highlights that color change.
Diamond on it, on each finger.
Oh Lord, that's too much PT. That's too. No, I like the chrome idea. I will, because your day job, Shannon, is a nail technician, so you would know. I'm gonna do the chrome before Monday's show with Shanti on Aquarius rising Africa, where we were creating all sorts of havoc as well. It was Bird Island on Monday. I will make sure that I've got chrome on this. Yes, well spotted, Sam 3 Artistry. I think it's good, music, but yeah, this is. I did not catch my finger in the door. No.
That would be a weird finger to catch in the door.
Awkward, the angle,
Mm. Well, that
you
long
never
scar
know what
there.
the Jedi really does, when she's off camera.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Well, it was very interesting today. I spent some time clearing and helping my other daughter with a flesh-eating fly that had found something underneath somewhere in her house, and there were hundreds of the suckers everywhere. So yeah, that was loads of them. I've never seen such things in my life, and I just thought they were all spies, but I digress. Indiana, here we go. Indiana Farm Girl, nice to see you. Hi. How are the light souls of so many children get transformed into darkness for birthing a demon? Thank you, ladies, for the education. Love the show. Yes. So this is a very specific question. And this is about utilizing children to birth a demon. So what happens in this case is many different children are utilized and hung from the top of a bath and drained. And then the woman that is it's like a demon mother, really. She is ready in her cycle, and then she is then given the command, and all of the work that happens around the bath creates a frequency that draws down this demon that is wishing to move into the physical body. So this is birthing the demon. That then ends up going into the woman, the mother of the demon, into the woman, and creates a conception. But that conception is an unholy conception, and they then end up being demonic when they eventually arrive. So, and that is how that works. And I'll leave that as an aside, because yeah, it's just one of those ones that I just happen to know about. So thank you, Indiana Farm Girl. Yes, that's really good, and thank you always for super chats. And Fifi Butterfly, those I knew in Vietnam said that the difference between a career military and those poor men who were conscripted and their souls were not military at all. Oh, yes, there is. There is. So yes, there is. Those that are career military are very different type of energy. And I think, although you can never get used to having to fight somebody else and take someone else's and unalive someone else, but there is a very big difference between those that were just sent to war. So thank you for that observation. And we're nearly down to the bottom. Let me have a look. And oh, yes. And I think we've got a comment here. Thank you, Aana. I felt strongly when you said that you had got the chills, and that was about what you had seen. Vietnam was weird. And we've got, let me get to the bottom, and lots of Fifi again. No, Fifi. Fifi is saying I should have chosen the middle fingers to make them black. Oh, Lord.
You should have.
No, chosen the middle fingers to give to our king and his stupid speech about 7-7. Don't get me on 7-7. I didn't even listen to him because really, the less said about him, the better. He and the King Charles Spaniels don't have very much in common. I think the Spaniels
Speaking of reptilians.
Oh dear. Oh, Jennifer, this is a new lady. Jennifer Weedmark. Always a great show, ladies. Thank you so much. Yes, and Agent R, thank you for explaining all the terms in plain English. Yes, we do try. We try, because otherwise it can get really quite difficult. And what have we got? Denise Menace. Future session. What about info on palmistry and or things like sleeping with your head to the north in your bed? Oh, that's very good. Yeah, the most important thing is never to have your feet facing directly to the door, because that's the position that you're coffin when they remove you from, if you are lucky enough to pass away at home, that is. Having it facing the door is not a very good position to be in. So yes, that's a good idea for a future show. Thank you so much. And I think we've got nearly to the bottom. Yeah, it's pretty horrific. Let me see. Another one. Oh, wait a minute. This one is from Jennifer Weedmark. 2 questions from you. That's really good. What happens when a woman gets pregnant by a man that has a demon attached to him? It's sometimes it is possible that the attachments can be passed through. However, we must realize that the soul of a baby is sovereign, and it is light. It's light based, and until those children, those babies get here, they will remain light, because the womb is a portal, and the dragons come down and move that portal and bring that child through. So those children will always have, unless it's a birthed demon, that's something totally different. If it's a normal human child, there will always be that free will and choice, and it's unlikely that there would be one that is assigned to the child that is entering into the 3D space. That takes a while, usually before the age of 8. Does anyone else have a comment on that? In your culture, Aquana, is there anything specific?
No, I agree with you, and I would also just add that if the man in this scenario already has that attached to him, these demons are opportunistic and they are a bit lazy. He's already got a home, so he's not going to try and get to that pure soul, and that demon entity is not going to want to wait until that child is born either, because it's already content hanging on to this guy. So that's all I would add.
Okay. And Selma?
Yeah, I would say it's more about how the mother is treated by the father.
I think you're on mute.
So, how the mother is triggered by the demons of the man, of the father of the child, because the child takes on the emotions of the mother. Yeah. So this is where I would see more the difficulty, or the concern, what does the child absorb from the mother, the energies of the mother, emotions, thoughts, and all of that are triggered from the man, from the father, the husband, the partner, however, that has the demons, because when you're in a relationship with someone who has demons, of course it influences you. You are being in danger of constantly being attacked, and if you're not aware of that, and if you are triggered in that way, and if you don't know what's going on, if you don't know, if you're weak and you don't know how to defend yourself or protect yourself or anything in that regard, then of course that baby would get these kind of emotions. So indirectly, yes, that baby could be affected, but not directly, like not that the demon would jump on the baby.
Yeah, good. And Shannon, any comments?
Yeah, I agree with Selma. I think it's where obviously the baby would take on any emotions and things like that the mother is going through as well. And I've said before, those entities are lazy, so
they are.
they're not ready to. But I also think it's also got a lot to do with how strong the mother's line is, possibly, where nature hopefully goes towards the mother's side and not the father's.
Yeah. The one thing I will add is that lately, over the last 5 years, I have noticed that we have children as little beings that are coming through, which have got such a strong golden energy around them, almost like a golden cage around them, that they're almost immune from attachments. This is a new thing. And we had a discussion yesterday, all the demon hunters got together and we had a discussion about this very factor, that we would find it very interesting for individuals that were immune or that had such a strong facade of energy that they would be very easy to be trained as demon hunters, because if they cannot have attachments onto them, that means that they're that evolutionary light level one step ahead. And this was a really good topic of conversation yesterday that we had in our meeting. So we have come to the end of our show, and I just want to also thank everybody. Thank you to Aana, to Shannon, and to Selma for a really fantastic summation of what your findings were. And just if you've just joined or if you weren't aware of the conclusion was twofold. One, there was a demonic attachment, but also that there was some form of Draco or some form of reptilian, because he was taking the loosh and he was taking the last soul particles into himself. So that was the final conclusion. Now we will be back next week with another show where we're going to be looking at another serial killer. And every week we will be doing exactly the same thing until the end of the year. And then we'll have some other exciting shows coming up. We'll also be having the Saturday Psychic Live, where you can come in and buy us a coffee. So everybody that's on the panel and new panel members coming in, buy a coffee to do a reading, 1 or 2 cards, and it won't be more than $10 or £9. So watch for that, because that's coming up, and we will more than likely be having a show just dedicated to Demon Hunters Inc., so that you can ask all your demony type questions and all these other things, so that we can get it all out in the open, so everybody can fight the good fight, join the light, be part of the light, be part of the solution. So I will say thank you to the panel members, and thank you to everybody, all our lovely people in the chat, and all the questions that we received. And thank you, everybody, and good night.
Night, all.
Night.
Bye-bye. And stay away from stilettos. Bye-bye.